regular viewers will know that this show is dedicated to the all-Australian girl, to the natural female. And she is the celestial body around which we orbit on this show. And the definition of a natural Australian female is a woman who loves being a woman. And what we have discovered since before the time of Cleopatra, that there is no more irresistible force on this planet than a girl who loves being a girl. And we are absolutely delighted to welcome to the studio this evening one of our most loved females, social researcher, writer, columnist, commentator, full-time men's rights activist. Please welcome Bettina Arndt.
Thank you.
Bettina, thanks so much for coming on the show. And of course, Ross, as usual, it's probably because he's jealous, but anyway, didn't mention your key thing, which is you're the cover girl of this week's Spectator magazine. And we're going to put that up on the screen. And it's a brilliant article called, I've seen it all before, seen it all before. So the idea is that whole #Me Too thing. You've seen it all before. This is feminism's oldest trick. Talk us through it, Bettina.
Look, this whole idea that Me Too is this brilliant breakthrough in women's liberation is such rubbish. You could go back over a century. So the suffragettes had this slogan, votes for women, chastity for men. And they were absolutely determined to rein in male sexuality as part of their finding their place in the world.
So right back then, they equated feminism
19th
with
century,
suppressing male sexuality.
And then we had to, end your tomcatting ways and keep you on a very short leash. And boy, have they been successful. I was just going through the whole history. If you look at the second wave feminists, we had Kate Miller. She wrote this book called Sexual Politics, where she just ripped apart Henry Miller and Norman Mailer and described them, all their sexual scenes as about subjugation of women. And so that was the beginning. And then along came the ghastly Andrea Dworkin. She was an anti-pornography campaigner.
I think we've got a quote from Andrea here.
Yeah.
What was it she said? Sorry.
She talks about
sons, didn't she? Every woman's son is.
Oh, that's right. Every woman's son is a rapist.
She's in front of all the pornography.
Every woman's son was a rapist, and every woman's partner was a potential rapist or something or other. So this idea of the rape culture, wasn't it? So that's
the rape culture, and that intercourse is collaborating with the enemy.
Right.
The penis as a weapon, all that stuff. It was this fierce. She ran this fierce campaign for well over a decade, trying to close down the sex shops, trying to close down the Playboy.
There we are. There's Andrea Dworkin at the moment, so we can have a look at her. So this was this whole idea of the evilness of the male.
Evilness of males, anti-male sexuality, and so it went on. Men were for decades in trouble. You were in trouble for looking at women in the wrong way, for telling sexual jokes, for not keeping your trousers zipped. Whatever you did publicly in relation to sexuality, men started to get criticised for it. And that just grew and grew and grew. And the Me Too is just simply part of that, an attempt to shut down male sexuality. And as I said, they're doing an incredible job, not just publicly, but also privately. And that's something that's always interested me, what's happening in heterosexual relations between men and women. Years ago, I did this research around sexual desire. And the really alarming thing there is we're seeing an increasing gap between men and women in sexual desire, with more and more women going off sex in their marriages. And we've got some graphs there.
We've got a graph we'll show you here. We'll just pop this up, which shows the kind of decline that you're talking about.
But can I just ask, is there,
there we go, desire and reality.
Yeah, so on the top line we have male desire, and on the bottom line we have female desire at various ages, going from 18 or 19 on the left-hand side of the graph, to 70 or 74, and what we see is that even at the very start, 18 to 19, you've got 100% of males feel desire at least a few times a week, but only, what is that, 72% of females. Is that?
And then look at that precipitous decline as we go through the different age groups. And so the older you get, the more chance it is that the woman's shut up shop, not interested at all in a sexual relationship.
But let me ask you this. Is this, if we were to throw up that graph, to do that research at 10,000 BC, what do you think it would show? Would it show a different story or the same?
Yeah.
Well,
what's the role of feminism?
Isn't that part of the survival strategy of the species, that the male will have a surfeit of desire?
Oh, yeah, no question.
And that's part of the, well, that's one of the things that empowers the female.
Men have always had, there's no question that there's something biological at the heart of this. Some people argue it's about mothers having to look after their babies. They can't be bonking all the time, so they have to, the gaze has to shift to looking after their children.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's no question about a biological difference there. But I think feminism has done a really good job in convincing women that if they're not interested, they don't have to bother.
Yeah.
They don't have to worry about getting their head in the right place. They don't have to make any effort to stimulate desire, to turn themselves on, let alone and that's just fine.
Yeah.
And so that's what's extraordinary. We see so many men suffering in celibate marriages, and the women are just happy with that.
And let me put the proposition to you that I don't doubt that there are plenty of men dying in celibate marriages, but I have a concern for this very large cohort of women, particularly in the 30 to 40 age group, who, when they start looking for the male who's prepared to be the father of their child, they find that there's hardly anyone in the arena, partly because feminism has so completely destroyed the mood, partly because a big chunk of them went to Sydney University where they learnt, masturbation instead of, liking blokes, but also, they are the losers. They wind up falling between fertility stools, and they're this I think something like, you tell us, what is the number of Australian women who will die childless, not by choice?
Well, I don't know the figures off, but there is increasing numbers. No question, the researchers know.
It's over 20%.
Yeah.
I think it's 25.
Yeah, it's very large and growing, and there's a major issue in terms of men deciding they're not interested. No, why would a man marry? I mean, sex used to be part of that equation, that he would assume there would be some sort of sexual relationship. And if he can't even get that, he can actually men get more sex living together, living with a woman, they certainly get more sex living together.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why they choose other blokes.
Yeah,
it's less complicated.
I mean, look at that. Men have up to 20 times the testosterone that women do, and you see that in homosexual relationships between men, where they're renowned for being really sexual. And do you know about lesbian bed death? I mean, two women, the research is very clear. Two women together are the least likely to have a high sexual frequency. They have the lowest sexual frequency. Heterosexual couples, she's putting on the brakes so that, they're in the middle. They're not, and most men are not getting nearly as much sex as they would like. And then gay men together, you've got that much stronger drive between the two.
So why is feminism so determined to suppress, or some aspects of feminism, determined to attack the male? Is this a kind of lesbian thing, or is it why does the idea of feminism that we all have, this idea that it's just an equal rights thing, and jobs and pay and all these, and people doing different jobs and not seeing girls at the racetrack who grid girls or whatever, that's the kind of cliche of feminism. What's in it for feminists to attack male sexuality like this?
Well, when you have a majority of women sexually disinterested, which is the reality now, and that's what the research is showing, this growing number of women who aren't interested in sex. They are not remotely interested in anything that is sexual, that is, where we have lust. They don't want lusty men in their lives. They don't want men telling sexual jokes. They don't want to feel uncomfortable around men because they're not interested in that. And I think that is part of this receptive audience for the whole Me Too campaign, where, a sexual joke is now suddenly
But to play devil's advocate, we have, the Harvey Weinstein, nothing's proven there, and I've argued that we should be letting the courts do their thing and the police do their thing. But the revulsion of that, and we've had all these sorts of allegations. Where does that stem from? This desire to somehow portray all men in that.
Well, you also got all the younger generation of women who've gone through the gender studies courses at universities, who've been taught that a sexual joke is an assault on a woman.
Yes, exactly.
You know, who've been taught that, you know, with the fake rape crisis on campuses, that our universities are full of these predators. I mean, they've grown up in this culture which is presenting anything to do with male sexuality as deviant and nasty and dangerous. And they're the perfect victims of the
Well, give us this, I mean, I really liked the Women's Weekly, you know, used to bring out in the 1950s guides for new wives. And I found there was a great deal of wisdom and common sense in most of the advice. But what is Jordan Peterson has just absolutely cracked open the internet with his advice to millennials. What is, last question, what is Bettina Arndt's advice to young Australian women?
Oh, well, sex matters to men. I mean, that if you want, I know the advice tends
That's
to be...
pretty good. That'll do. We got it. Done.
Yes,
Sex
got
matters
it.
to men. You learnt it on The Outsiders. That's
Fantastic.
Bettina, thank you so much, Bettina Arndt. Her article in The Spectator is a cracker. Make sure you get that. I happen to be the editor. That's why I put it in there.